One of the things that characterizes the modern world is economic globalization. In order to see this, just look at a simple cup of coffee. The beans made come from Brazil, the machine from China, and the marketing ideas from all over the world. People in many countries work together to get the coffee to your table. Even how we drink coffee, like espresso or American style, is influenced by different cultures. This shows how our world is connected and how something simple like enjoy a cup of coffee is a part of a big global process. It's like a web that links countries, businesses, and people together. This wasn't always the case. Before the Industrial Revolution, food consumption was largely local. People ate what was grown and produced nearby, and there were fewer connections between different parts of the world, and trade was limited. Food variety depended on the season and local climate, not imports. Perhaps no family characterizes the globalization of the global economy during the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, like the Sassoon family. Everyone knows about the Rothschilds, the mega-wealthy multinational Jewish family which had a finance empire. However, the Sassoon family, which has a similar story to the Rothschilds, just instead of banking and government's bonds, specialized in international trade, gets very little public knowledge and recognition, that even a nerd like me only recently heard of them. In this video, we're going to shed some light on them. The origins of the Sassoon family in Iraq and Baghdad lays deep and can be traced hundreds of years back, perhaps even thousands of years back, up to the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem and the Babylonian exile by King Nebuchadnezzar, more than 2 millennia and a half ago. For centuries, the Sassoons were part of the elite of the Baghdadi Jewish community, primarily serving in key political and spiritual positions. This is where the first and main hero of our story, David Sassoon, comes in. David Sassoon was born in the late 18th century. His father, Sassoon ben Saleh, was a wealthy businessman and served as the chief treasurer to the Pashas, which is basically the finance minister of the Jewish community in Baghdad, and president or Nasi of the city's Jewish community. In the 1830s, David's life had a dramatic shift. He became a refugee. The reason for that is that Daoud Pasha, the governor of Baghdad and its regions, was very tyrannical, and in order to escape possible persecutions and confiscations of his family property, he left for Mumbai, which was back then under the rule of the intermining of the British East India Company and the British Empire. This is where his business skills started to show off, and where he earned his wealth. David also established strong ties with the British Empire and received British citizenship, which massively helped him and his family. David's business empire primarily engaged in a trade of two products, cotton and opium. Yeah, opium. This may seem horrendous and evil today, but you need to look at it in historical context. We'll get to that in a minute. First of all, let's look at his cotton trade. Back at his day, Mumbai was an international trade hub, and India, under the rule of Britain, was one of the biggest producers of cotton worldwide, so it was natural for David to engage in the trade of it. One of the things that got him to become a successful and wealthy cotton trader was a fiery geopolitical event which we may have heard of, the American Civil War. The American Civil War paralyzed the production of cotton in America and lowered the supply of it, and when supplies goes down, prices go up. This got many cotton traders in other parts of the world, such as India, where our boy was from, to get really wealthy. However, what mainly caused David Sassoon to become wealthy was the trade of opium. The reason for that, just like with cotton, was his luck with geopolitical events. This time, it was the Opium Wars. Basically what happened was that at the time, Great Britain was buying a lot of stuff, such as tea and silk, from China, but China didn't buy many Western goods in return. This got Britain into massive trade deficits, which they needed to cover in order to continue enjoying so many imports from China. Britain chose to cover this trade deficit by exporting opium to China, which is a very addictive drug. The Chinese government didn't like that, so it tried restricting it. And the British, who wanted to continue selling opium, responded to these restrictions with war. This is where we get the Opium Wars, which are a fascinating topic. However, we don't have 3 hours, so we can't get too deeply into that. What you need to know is that eventually the British won 2 wars against China, revolving that, and ensured the free trade of opium to China. Who benefited from this, perhaps more than anyone else, was our friend David Sassoon, who traded a lot of opium from India to China. Today, this sounds like a really evil and criminal thing to do. However, you need to take this in historical context. Back then, opium was often used for medical reasons, and consuming it for enjoyment was pretty common, so trading opium can be compared to stuff such as selling alcohol today per se, rather than stuff such as crack or cocaine. His trade of opium didn't seem to bother him from living a pious religious Jewish lifestyle. For example, despite his very busy professional life, he observed the Shabbat and didn't work in it, and made time in day to study the Talmud. However, perhaps the biggest sign of his religious piety was his philanthropic work. He made a rule in which 1/4% of every transaction he made had to go to philanthropy. Now, 1/4% doesn't seem like a lot at first glance. However, you need to remember that he and his company engaged in a lot of financial transactions, with a lot of money being involved, which means that a lot of money accumulated into his philanthropic budgets. With this money, he built anything from synagogues to libraries, to schools to hospitals, in anywhere from China to India to the UK. David Sassoon, which we extensively covered in the first part of this series, died in 1864, leaving behind 8 sons to continue his business activities. This is also where our story takes a shift from focusing on the life story activities of one individual to that of one big family with several branches who specialized each in his own location, whether it was Hong Kong, Shanghai, Mumbai or London. This kinda reminds me of the splitting of the Rothschild family into the London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna and Naples branches. This period of the second generation of the Sassoon trading empire is probably the golden age of the Sassoon family, who apart from successfully continuing and expanding David Sassoon's trade of opium and cotton, as well as his philanthropy, diversified the family business into new investments in anywhere from an American company syndicate, Hungary's national debt, to banks and property. This helped the family to withstand turbulences in the fields of textile and opium. In this period, the Sassoon family also went into a process of assimilation into the British Victorian aristocracy. For example, speaking the English language, adopting Western British clothing, as well as adopting leisure activities the British aristocracy had, such as betting on horse racing. Albert Sassoon, who was one of the sons of David Sassoon, even received knighthood in 1872 and was named Sir Albert. However, this assimilation process of leaving the historic Jewish Baghdadi culture and heritage in favor of British aristocratic culture also marked the start of the decadence of the Sassoons. That's because this meant that the family lost its fabric and it's tied to David Sassoon, the father of the family's business empire. However, what really caused the decline of the Sassoon is geopolitical events. Similar to how geopolitical events, such as the Opium Wars and the American Civil War, helped in the rise of the Sassoons, geopolitical events were also the force that pushed the decline of the Sassoon business empire. First of all, there was the decline of the trade of opium. This happened because in 1907, Great Britain, India, and China had an agreement to end the cultivation and trade of opium, which means that the revenues of the Sassoons from the trade of this good plummeted. However, what really killed the Sassoons as a business empire was the Japanese invasion of China in 1937, which caused the Second Sino-Japanese War, which killed millions of people, which, as you can guess, wasn't exactly good for the business of the Shanghai and Hong Kong branches of the Sassoon family. The final nail in the coffin came in 1947, when India gained independence from the British Empire. That's because its government, under Jawaharlal Nehru, implemented socialist policies which included high tariffs and trade barriers, and very tough bureaucracy and business, which, as you can guess, wasn't very good for the business of the Mumbai branch of the Sassoon family. By the second half of the 20th century, very little remained of the once monstrous Sassoon firm.